Hello, everybody. We're so happy to have you. Welcome to our webinar series in which we cover a broad range of topics. This is presented by Whitestone Counseling Resources. My name is John Noto. I'm one of the owners, and I'm also a therapist on our staff. And we're just so glad that you could join us. Today, we'll be talking about not just mental health, but how it relates to the rest of us and our nutrition and how we care well for our bodies, how we steward our bodies. And Angela will be sharing with us. But I thought first it would be good to just kind of introduce Whitestone. Whitestone Counseling Resources has been around for 26 plus years, and Whitestone exists to serve the local church. Whitestone is a ministry that is a counseling ministry that exists to partner with local churches and congregations and leaders and provide clinically excellent mental health care that is grounded and rooted in biblical truth and theology. And so we really try to meet the many needs that God has put into every one of us that overlap and interact with each other. So today's topic is perfect for that. Whitestone presently has 4 main locations. I'm in our Palatine location. We also have offices in Northfield, and then in Lake County, we are up in Lake Bluff and Grace Lake. Those are our 4 offices. We have 25 people on staff, which includes an internship program. And that means that we get to provide a lot of different services to a lot of different people, whether couples or families or individual. We are currently able to take insurance for Blue Cross Blue Shield, PPO, as well as Medicare. And our intern program exists to help those who maybe don't have benefits to be able to receive the services that they need. So we really try to be both wide and deep in how we care well for people. So I don't want to take up too much time. I just want to let you know who you're hearing from. I want to give the show over here to Angela, who will be presenting our topic today. So go ahead, take it away, Angela.
All right, thanks, John. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm really excited about the topic of the connection between the gut and mental health. And so if John could just get the PowerPoint started there, we can get started. So we are talking today about gut-brain connection and the role of nutrition for helping our mental health today. And so I'm just going to give a little bit of an introduction for myself. So we can go to the next slide here. We had some difficulties with the slides, and so some of the formatting has changed. But if you ask for the PDF at the end of the webinar today, I'll be able to send it to you and you'll be able to see the content better. So my name is Angela Heier, and I am one of the staff counselors here at Whitestone Counseling Resources. I have a MA in mental health counseling through Trinity International University and am a licensed professional counselor here in Illinois. So just a little bit of background on my interest in the topic with gut health. Really, it began years ago in my own personal health journey, particularly in the area of the connection between the gut and chronic fatigue. And so that's been kind of years of me delving into that topic in assessing my own health. And then I also completed a master's in international health through Curtin University, which was not focused on gut health and it was not focused on mental health, but I did do a course on nutrition, which really piqued my interest on the way that nutrition impacts our health. And so it was only natural when I entered into the mental health world to gain an interest in the connection between gut health and nutrition in mental health. So some just important notes here is that I am not a nutritionist, dietitian, or medical professional. I am a mental health counselor. And so this webinar really is for informational purposes only, and it's not intended to be providing medical or specific dietary advice to anyone. So our agenda for today is to go over some of the objectives of this webinar, talk about the microbiome and its connection to mental health, briefly discuss stress and its impact on the digestive system, speak about the impact of inflammation. We'll then look at the role of nutrition on neuroplasticity and its impact for mental health. And then we'll go into a little bit more practical information on how we can feed the gut and fuel the brain, as well as some tips and takeaways. So first of all, our objectives for today is to gain an understanding of the connection between gut health, dietary habits, and mental health, as well as to provide basic principles that will empower you to make some evidence-based changes to improve your mental health. These are easy, cost-effective ways that you can just start to make little changes to improve your gut and improve your mental health. And I hope that through this seminar, you will also be able to recognize the complexity with which we've been created and be in awe of the one who created us. The psalmist declares, "I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made." And as we delve into the gut and its connection with the brain, I hope that that becomes evident that you too are fearfully and wonderfully made. So just some gut facts about the microbiome and mental health. So the gut microbiome hosts a complex ecosystem consisting of trillions of different microorganisms. And you can see the list there of the different types of microorganisms. We're going to be focusing on bacteria today, which is the largest amount of microorganisms in the gut. And the gut actually holds the largest ecosystem in our body, which is really fascinating. These microorganisms play a vital role in a variety of tasks. They communicate with the brain through the gut-brain axis. They metabolize food and synthesize important nutrients. They affect mitochondrial functioning, they regulate our immune systems, and they produce nourishment for our gut lining cells. We'll be discussing each of these a little bit and seeing how each and every one of these tasks have an impact on our mental health. So communication, how does the gut-brain axis work? How does the gut interact with the brain? So essentially the gut-brain axis consists of a network of nerves that provide a pathway for continual two-way communication between the gut and the brain. And so through these pathways of nerves, the central nervous system is able to communicate with the enteric nervous system. So the central nervous system consists of the brain and spinal cord. It controls our thought, movement, emotions. It's really important when thinking about mental health. And the enteric nervous system is housed within the gastrointestinal tract, often referred to as the second brain, and is part of the autonomic nervous system that's responsible for digestion and other tasks of the GI tract. So this communication, this gut-brain axis, enables the ENS to influence mood, cognition, and overall functioning of the brain. And therefore, when we're talking about mental health, we're trying to improve our own mental health, it's really important that we pay attention to the ENS. So let's talk a little bit more about what is the gut-brain axis. Like I mentioned, it's a group of nerves that allow two-way communication. Like you can see here in this diagram, there's the gut and there's the brain connected by the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the body. It is just one of the pathways where communication happens. It can also happen through the HPA axis, the spinal cord, and immune system. But we'll be focusing on the vagus nerve just because of the scope of its importance. So the vagus nerve has a number of tasks. It mediates inflammation, it regulates hunger and stress, and it helps to coordinate emotions. So it's really important. It, like I mentioned, it is the longest nerve in the body, and it connects to most of the organs in the body. And because of how well connected it is, it means that messages can be passed throughout the body through the vagus nerve in milliseconds. It happens very fast. So the way that this communication happens through the vagus nerve from the gut to the brain is through neurotransmitters, which are chemical molecules. We often hear people talk about having chemical imbalance in their brain, and really these chemicals that they're referencing are neurotransmitters. And so neurotransmitters work hard to enable nerve cells to communicate with each other throughout the body. And so if neurotransmitters are out of balance, there are problems with these messages being passed. And the importance of gut bacteria in this whole system is that it's the gut bacteria that actually play a role in producing these neurotransmitters and producing these brain cells that then enable these messages to pass along the gut-brain axis. So takeaway is a healthy gut is necessary for a healthy brain. So the second role that we mentioned gut bacteria having is the synthesization of nutrients, and this is a necessary part for these neurotransmitters to be produced. So the gut microbes metabolize food, they synthesize the nutrients in our food to produce these brain chemicals. And these brain chemicals require adequate levels of particular nutrients in order to function properly, in order to be developed. So, for instance, serotonin requires sufficient folate, iron, and vitamin B12. And other neurotransmitters also require certain levels of different nutrients. So I'm just going to walk us through a few of these neurotransmitters that really have a direct impact on mental health and that are important, so that we can kind of have some ways to think about in terms of how to increase these so that we can impact our mental health in a positive way. So serotonin has a role of regulating mood, sleep, appetite, and pain, along with mitochondrial functioning. And we will talk about the mitochondria later on. It impacts a variety of mental health disorders, including depression and anxiety. Often when people talk about serotonin, it is, like I said, referred to as a brain chemical. But the interesting thing is that 90% of serotonin actually is in the digestive tract and not in the brain. The second one is dopamine, which has a role in regulating motivation, reward, and movement. Insufficient levels of dopamine have been linked with depression, and dopamine dysregulation has also been implicated in some psychotic disorders. And so clearly, maintaining healthy levels of dopamine is really important in order to maintain optimal mental health. GABA is another neurotransmitter that's really important for mental health. It regulates fear, stress, anxiety, and it's the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, which means that it is the calm you down sort of transmitter. It is implicated in anxiety, depression, insomnia, neurological disorders, amongst others. And again, in reference to the mitochondria, this particular neurotransmitter is highly influenced by the mitochondria. And then finally, norepinephrine. It has the role of impacting attention and focus, the sleep cycle, learning, mood, and energy. And it impacts various disorders, including depression. And we won't be speaking a lot about the sleep cycle today, but that impacts a lot of mental health as well. And so if this neurotransmitter isn't functioning properly, that impacts a whole lot of things. All right, so what is the concern with the imbalance of neurotransmitters? Well, when they're imbalanced, it affects our mental health and can contribute towards the development of a number of different mental health disorders. So in order to have that balance of neurotransmitters, in order to have optimal mental health, we need to have a healthy gut microbiome. Unhealthy gut bacteria impact the effectiveness of neurotransmitters in a number of different ways. First of all, pathogenic bacteria can fuel the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines, and this impacts neurotransmitter synthesis, and then it can result in the change in levels of neurotransmitters. And like we saw earlier, when some of these neurotransmitters are low, it can result in issues such as depression. It can also disrupt communication pathways and alter neurotransmitter release. So even if the neurotransmitters are there, it can alter and impact them being released. And if they aren't being released, it can have impact as well. So neurotransmitter functioning and balance, in addition, has a two-way impact with the mitochondria through a feedback loop, as we'd referenced before. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about the mitochondria. So the mitochondria is vital to our functioning. It's often called the powerhouse of the cell, and it produces the energy and the building blocks that are needed for different functions in the body, including having a role in producing, secreting, and regulating neurotransmitters. And I hope by this point in the presentation, it's been clear that if our neurotransmitters aren't produced, secreted, or regulated properly, it has an impact on our mental health. So when the mitochondria is not functioning properly, it leads to an imbalance in these neurotransmitters, which then leads to a disruption in optimal brain functioning. So as I mentioned before, there is this reciprocal relationship with some neurotransmitters, which also aid in regulating the mitochondria. So some of the regulatory functions of the mitochondria include regulating the immune system, stress response, hormone functioning, gene expression, cell growth, and cleanup of damaged cells. And when the mitochondria is in dysfunction, it is also implicated in chronic inflammation, neurodegenerative disease, stress reactivity, and depression. So again, to keep our mental health optimal, we need to be addressing the mitochondria. So where do gut bacteria come into this? Well, gut bacteria produce the substances which can increase or decrease mitochondrial functioning. And studies have indicated that if we have sufficient nourishing healthy bacteria, we can increase mitochondrial functioning. So the next role that gut has is in regulation of our immune systems. So the immune system is actually intricately involved in everything happening in our bodies, and this includes our brain. And the gut happens to be the largest endocrine, which is a hormone secreting organ in humans, which means it has a vital role in the immune response. When we have an imbalance of unhealthy bacteria, it can produce a chronic inflammatory response, which has a number of different impacts, including impacting the emotional circuitry in the brain, reward processing, memory and learning. It also inhibits mitochondrial functioning and contributes to depression and anxiety. And lastly, the microbes in our gut are important for the nourishment of gut lining. And the gut lining is really important because it serves as a gatekeeper to prevent toxins and proteins that don't belong from entering the bloodstream. So when these toxins and these proteins get into the bloodstream, it can cause inflammation. When we have excessive pathogenic bacteria, it can lead to an increased permeability of this gut lining and allow those things that shouldn't be entering in to enter. And the results can be allergies, it can be autoimmune diseases, cognitive concerns, malabsorption of nutrients, and inflammation. I just want to highlight here the malabsorption of nutrients and the importance of that on mental health. As we talked earlier, nutrients are essential for the development of brain chemicals, and so when we're not absorbing nutrients, that impacts our neurotransmitters, which then impacts our mental health. So good bacteria are necessary to produce the substances that provide healing and nourishment to line our gut cells, as well as to keep pathogenic bacteria in check. And I just want to make a note here, like our gut bacteria is already forming in utero and during the birthing process and throughout our whole life, it's shifting. And so even if we have an overload of pathogenic bacteria right now that's impacting these things, we are able to shift that and to get more healthy bacteria in there to counter some of the pathogenic bacteria. And that's something that we're going to talk about later in this webinar. So just want to touch a little bit on the research that backs up this idea that the microbiome directly impacts mental health. So there was some research that was done in mice that showed that mice living in germ-free environments actually elicited a greater stress response to certain stimuli, along with an increase in cortisol secretion and a decrease in BDNF levels than mice not in germ-free environments. And we will be speaking about BDNF and explaining that further in this webinar. After being provided with a probiotic, those same mice demonstrated a change in their behavioral response to stress, so the stress response actually decreased. Furthermore, a study conducted on 111 patients presenting with serious mental illnesses at the Houston Methodist Hospital found that there was a greater severity of psychiatric symptoms correlated with lower diversity in the microbiome, which highlights the importance of really having a diverse microbiome and getting a lot of different kinds of bacteria in there. Research also has indicated that the presence of certain bacterial species in the GI tract can improve cognitive functioning and decrease reactivity to stress. I'll also note here that certain bacterial species are required for creating certain neurotransmitters. And finally, a study conducted at a university in Germany found that when the gut was replenished with healthy bacteria in participants, it led to changes in brain activity, reduced stress response, and decrease in mental fatigue. It shows direct link between how we're fueling and feeding our gut impacts then how we feel mentally. All right, so let's look a little bit at stress and its impact on gut functioning. Chronic stress actually can alter the microbiome. So stress-induced changes in gut bacteria can endanger the gut lining and can therefore then increase the inflammatory response. It also impacts digestion. So when we're stressed out, our sympathetic nervous system gets activated. It's that fight or flight reaction, and our digestive system doesn't work properly. It slows down. And it also alters the secretion of digestive enzymes, which are needed to break down food. And so if our food isn't being broken down properly, it can inhibit our absorption of nutrients and deplete nutrients, which then impacts the development of neurotransmitters. Okay, inflammation. Inflammation has a huge role in a lot of different health conditions, a lot of different mental health conditions. So some of the pro-inflammatory factors that contribute towards chronic inflammation include chronic stress, hormonal imbalances, social isolation, sleep deprivation, microbiome dysbiosis, and environmental toxins. These factors can contribute to imbalance between pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory molecules and can result in chronic inflammation, which can shift the neural network activity in regions of the brain that are responsible for fear, emotion, and arousal. If we have inflammation and we want to improve our mental health, we really need to decrease the chronic inflammation that we're experiencing. Chronic low-grade inflammation also keeps cell immune secretions on, which can result in the ongoing production of proteins called cytokines, and pro-inflammatory cytokines triggered by foods such as sugar can disrupt the functioning and metabolism of neurotransmitters and then contribute to the progression of mental health disorders. Furthermore, when our gastrointestinal system is inflamed, this actually can activate shifts in mood through messages that are sent from the enteric nervous system to the central nervous system. It's a really fascinating process, the connection that's there, and the way that this can affect the mood that we're experiencing. Furthermore, pathogenic bacteria can produce an excessive production of free radicals, which leads to oxidative stress, which leads to an increase in cell destruction, which leads to vulnerability to mental illness. And so in this, it's really important to be decreasing the inflammation in our body, and antioxidants are a really important way to be able to protect against the impact of free radicals. And finally, chronic inflammation also correlates with various mental health concerns, including depression, anxiety, cognitive dysfunction, which we referenced earlier. All right, let's move on a little bit onto the impact of nutrition on neuroplasticity, and the importance of the brain in mental health is undeniable. So just some brain facts is that the brain has greater than 80 billion neurons, which transmit nerve pulses and facilitate emotions, thoughts, and actions. It contains glial cells comprising the fatty insulation of neurons, which are vital for greater efficiency in neural signaling, and microbiome also impacts the development and functioning of these glial cells. So again, there's that connection there. And the brain also contains signaling molecules, hormones, and the neurotransmitters that we spoke about earlier that aid in passing these messages between cells. The brain has the capacity to grow and adapt regardless of age. It's called neuroplasticity, really exciting. And finally, the connection between sort of nutrition and neuroplasticity is that 20% of what we eat is actually consumed by the brain. It provides the energy and nutrients to create elements that are necessary for brain functions. And the vitamins and the minerals that we take in are the vital building blocks of healthy brain growth, which is another reason why absorption of nutrients is so important. And finally, studies have shown that healthier eating habits contribute to a larger hippocampus, the part of the brain that's necessary for learning and memory. So what you take in, how you fuel your brain does have an impact. I just want to speak a little bit on the BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It is a brain-growing protein that enables the growth and survival of brain cells and enables the brain to produce new synaptic connections, so it's super important. It supports brain resiliency against stress and anxiety, and it modulates the neurotransmitters in our brain. This is also impacted by what we take in through food. Some of the foods that allow this to increase in our bodies include wild seafoods, nuts, berries, and dark chocolate. And some of the research indicates that lower levels of brain-derived neurotrophic factor in people diagnosed with major depressive disorder and anxiety disorders compared to other diagnoses, and also indicate that a change in dietary habits can actually increase BDNF and decrease symptoms of depression. So lastly, I just want to talk a little bit about just some practical tips. How can we feed our gut and fuel our brain? What are some other things that we can kind of take away from this workshop? So here are just some tips for a healthy bacteria in our gut. Like I mentioned earlier, we can change the microbiome makeup of our gut. So we can shift from having too many proliferation of unhealthy bacteria and get more healthy bacteria. So one way to do this is to get probiotics. It contains healthy microorganisms that can colonize in the intestines. It promotes a healthy digestive tract and produces nutrients. Some of the ways that we can get probiotics, apart from buying them in pill form at the health food store, we can get them through yogurt and kefir, kimchi, kombucha, fermented soy, and other fermented vegetables. I would recommend, if you're going to the grocery store and looking for these things, to check to see if it says that it has active strains of these microorganisms in it. And then secondly is important is the prebiotics. So where the probiotics helps to replenish healthy bacteria in the gut, the prebiotics helps to feed that healthy bacteria. And so it helps to protect the balance of the good bacteria in the gut. And prebiotics come in the form of soluble and digestible dietary fiber. And some examples are onions, garlic leeks, asparagus, bananas, beans, dandelion, and wheat. All right, and then fiber. Fiber is super important in our modern Western diet. A lot of the fiber has been taken out of things, and it's really important for us to get that fiber back into our diet. It helps to clean up the system. It's essential for healthy colon. It's essential for mental health. It aids in cleaning out the digestive tract. It's converted by microbes into butyrate, which fuels mitochondria, which again, mitochondria fuels the building blocks that we need. It gives the energy. And fiber comes in both soluble and insoluble. So soluble helps to slow down digestion, which aids in being able to take in the nutrients. And some ways to get that is oat bran, nuts, legumes, chia seeds, some fruits and veg. And there's insoluble, which aids in cleaning the system out and pushing materials through, and can be found in wheat bran, whole grains, oat bran, brown rice, flaxseed, skins of some fruit and veg. And then we also need to feed our gut and fuel our brain with essential vitamins and minerals. So just kind of go through a few to give a little bit of an idea what are some of the nutrients that we need in order to give proper fuel to our body. I just want to say again that this isn't intended to give specific dietary advice. I'm giving some ideas of maybe which foods hold these things, but then I really encourage you to do your own research, find food that you really enjoy that may be providing these essential vitamins and minerals, the essential probiotics and prebiotics and fiber into your diet. So first of all, vitamin A. So vitamin A is really important for mental health because it is an antioxidant that aids in protecting the brain. It's linked to a reduction in depression, and it's found in foods such as carrots, pumpkin, sweet potato, and chicken liver. Secondly is vitamin B1, which when there is insufficient vitamin B1, we can experience low energy, brain fog, irritability, and apathy. And this is found in foods such as pork, trout, sunflower seeds, peas, and pecans. There's choline, which is like a cousin to the vitamin Bs. It helps to regulate inflammation. It's a key ingredient in neurotransmitter production, and it's found in beef liver, eggs, scallops, and Brussels sprouts. Here we have vitamin B6, vital to maintain a healthy nervous system. It's also vital for brain development and function, and it fights inflammation. And found in foods such as wild salmon, chicken, chickpeas, bananas, and potatoes. Vitamin B9, which again aids in the reduction of inflammation. It's necessary for making major neurotransmitters, which regulate the mood, sense of pleasure, and clarity of thinking, as well as those neurotransmitters that are so important for that gut-brain communication to happen, and found in foods such as lentils, chickpeas, chicken liver, and Brussels sprouts. We have vitamin B12, which is important for the production of serotonin, for norepinephrine, and for dopamine, all mood regulators. It supports the myelination of brain cells to increase efficiency in neural signaling. It's found in foods such as beef liver, eggs, seafood, and dairy. Vitamin C, which is an antioxidant that offsets damage to brain cells caused by free radicals. It aids in cellular health and neural signaling. And found in foods such as citrus, papaya, strawberries, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, and bell peppers. And then some of the minerals that are also important. Potassium regulates serotonin levels. Serotonin is connected to anxiety. Inadequate levels also linked to mental fatigue, found in things like beet greens, Swiss chard, spinach, kale, bananas. Iron aids in the transportation of oxygen to the brain. The brain needs oxygen in order to thrive and function properly. It's also necessary for the production of serotonin and dopamine. And insufficient levels can result in low energy, focus issues, and increase in irritability, found in oysters, spinach, pumpkin seeds, and red meat. And here we have zinc, which regulates brain signaling and neuroplasticity. Low levels linked to decrease in glutamate and serotonin, thus heightening risk of anxiety and depression. It's found in foods such as oysters, ground turkey, pumpkin seeds, and sesame seeds. Magnesium aids in regulation of neurotransmitters affecting mood. Low levels are linked to higher inflammatory markers and an increase in depression. It also improves sleep quality, which impacts so many things with mental health. And it's found in foods such as black beans, spinach, soybeans, cashews, and almonds. And finally here we have selenium, which is necessary for producing brain-protecting antioxidants. It aids thyroid function, which regulates mood, energy, and anxiety. It's found in foods such as tuna, shrimp, and Brazil nuts, and omega-3 fatty acids, which fight inflammation. They promote neuroplasticity, so our brain can change. Found in wild salmon, tuna, sardines, anchovies, and oysters. So those are just a few of the nutrients that our bodies need. If you think you may be lacking in any of them, I really encourage you to go and seek a healthcare professional who may be able to help you figure that out, just because it is so important when we're thinking about mental health and being able to have optimal mental health. So just a few final tips and takeaways from our time today. We talked a lot about the connection between the microbiome and mental health, the importance of having healthy gut bacteria in order to create the neurotransmitters that are necessary for the communication between our brain and gut, neurotransmitters that directly impact on mental health concerns such as anxiety and depression. And so one way that you can feed your gut is to have probiotic-rich foods and prebiotics. So maybe one thing to try is to learn to ferment your own food. It can be really easy. It can be fun. There's some books out there that show kind of step-by-step what you need to do. It could be a new maybe hobby to take up this fall. And then we talked about some of the nutrients that are really important and the way that the gut plays a role in synthesizing nutrients in order to make neurotransmitters. And so it's really important to be fueling our brain with those essential vitamins and nutrients. So takeaway tip for that is to eat the rainbow. Get in antioxidant rich, colorful fruits and veg. Find ones that you really enjoy. Then de-stress. I mean, stress really has a huge impact in so many areas of mental health, including gut functioning. And when our gut isn't functioning properly, we're not digesting properly, we're not taking in the nutrients that we need. So slow down, take a few deep breaths before your meal. Try to eat when you're not in a stress state. If life just overall feels stressed, try to find ways to de-stress in general. Spend time in prayer, stretch, light exercise, develop a new habit perhaps that promotes relaxation. We also talked about inflammation and the role that it has in disrupting gut function, disrupting mental health. So some ideas are load up on anti-inflammatory spices like turmeric and ginger and cinnamon, spices that you may enjoy that make the food taste good and that also provide anti-inflammatory properties. Try to limit inflammatory foods like ultra-processed foods, sugar, and regulate your sleep cycle. I will say here that sometimes when we're making a shift in the way that we're fueling our body with nutrients, that we'll realize like we have all these cravings for perhaps foods that we aren't necessarily wanting to have as much of because it's not optimal for our brains and guts. And the cravings can kind of come for a number of different reasons. But I just really want to briefly touch on 3 reasons why those cravings could be there. And first of all, sometimes the gut bacteria in our gut actually controls the cravings that we have. So if you find that you're continuously craving something, it could actually be because of the makeup in your gut right now. And as you start to shift that makeup in your gut, your cravings could actually change. So sometimes the unhealthy bacteria in our gut can actually make it difficult for us to make changes in some of these areas. A second reason is sometimes we have emotional connections to the food that we're eating, and could be an opportunity to maybe try to work through some of the emotions that are connected to that, whether it be finding a supportive person in your life, whether it be seeking counseling, but kind of looking at, okay, what is this emotional connection connected to these cravings? And lastly, cravings can also be connected to food sensitivities. Sometimes when we have food sensitivities, we actually crave the food that our body's actually sensitive to. And so if you think that you may have a food sensitivity, which could be contributing to inflammation, be contributing to these cravings, I'd really encourage you to maybe go see a healthcare professional who is able to help in that area, who can help you navigate how to work through those to decrease the inflammation. And finally, I'd just encourage us all to cultivate joy, spend time with people we love, can help in so many different areas of our mental health and help with the inflammation and stress. And to remember that even just taking one small step in the direction towards health can have an impact. Sometimes we try to just take on everything at once and get overwhelmed and quit. And so maybe just take one tip and start there and work towards increasing the healthy bacteria in your gut, increasing your health in this way. It's some evidence-based tips that we can implement quite easily, but I encourage us to start small. Thank you so much. That's the end of our time today. I just really appreciate you joining us today, and here is my contact information. So if anyone has any questions about the material here today, feel free to reach out to me. And if you would like to have a PDF of the PowerPoint presentation, I can also send that your way.
All right, thank you so much, Angela. I learned a lot. I really appreciate it. And as we said in the beginning, for any of those haven't had any questions come in, but if you'd like to ask some questions or stick around, we'd be happy to chat with you one-on-one. But this does conclude the time of our webinar. I hope for anybody who's eating their lunch while they're enjoying this, as I might have been doing while I was listening, that you're learning a lot and taking it to heart. So me and Angela stick around for a few minutes. Anybody would like to do that as well. All right, we have one question that just came in that's asking about diet and age. Are there differences as it comes to age? Should that be a big factor?
The diet?
Angela, do you have thoughts on that? Yeah,
Yeah,
diet as it relates to age. What considerations should somebody have thinking about the age that they are and how that impacts how they might want to think about this material?
sure. Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think a lot of these things that we've talked about today really do relate to any age. We can implement these tips at any age. And thankfully, even with like neuroplasticity, like we were talking about, and the ability for our gut to change at any age, I don't think that there is a particular age factor necessarily in terms of um, utilizing some of these tips in terms of creating a good microbiome. That said, I would really encourage people to go and talk to maybe their medical doctor or nutritionist in terms of like specifics in terms of what may or may not be recommended at particular ages, because that's not my scope of expertise.
Mhm.
So, but I wouldn't say that there's an age limit in terms of trying to increase the health of our microbiome.
Mhm. Yeah, it makes me think. A piece of advice I often give to clients is that really in any sort of counseling practice, behavior change, anything like that, we're doing a social science experiment with a sample size of one. We're trying stuff and we're seeing how it impacts you, these individual differences. So I think um, that, um, would be a good way to think about that. A lot of this is really informational, but how it impacts you. I mean, so many times you said in the presentation that, that person's individual experience is going to be completely different. I'm sure that relates to age too. So another follow-up question is, what role does a mental health counselor play in managing and navigating all of this? So like your relationships with your clients, Angela, what does that look like, the mental health side of it, the counseling side of it?
Um, like specific to what we've talked about today, or just in general in terms
Hmm.
of managing
Yeah,
the.
like how does that show up in the mental health counseling relationship?
Sure, yeah. I think the mental health counseling relationship really provides that space for um, being able to navigate some of the emotions and anxiety, depression, other symptoms that come up that may be related to what we talked about today. And it provides that space to be able to like have someone journey and walk alongside you in that. And um, so I'd say,
Hmm.
yeah, that's kind of the role of the mental health counselor, to be able to kind of help you address that um, emotional side of things, and
Hmm.
to be
Hmm.
able to kind of see as a holistic person kind of some of the different factors that may be impacting it. And it may at times also be referring you then to be like, maybe you should go see this other healthcare professional
Hmm.
when it's outside perhaps our scope.
Yeah, yeah. It's absolutely. I think what I would highlight from what you just said, it's so important to see somebody as a holistic person, a whole person. That's our job, is to do that and to help individuals see themselves that way too and care for themselves from that perspective. Great. All right. Um, all right. One more question. Are there any resources that you would recommend? And with that, this person said books, podcasts, anything in particular that you point to that you think would be really helpful with this?
Sure. Yeah, there's some really great resources out there. I'm not good at remembering the names of things off the top of my head, but if people send me an email, my email was on the slideshow there, then I'll be able to send you the specific names of some resources
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
can help provide some guidance on the topic.
Great. Yeah. Yeah, I know. Just one thing off the top of my head. I mean, this is more your area of expertise, but Dr. Daniel Amen
Mm-hmm.
and their clinic is local, and they do a lot of work with regard to nutrition and how it impacts mental health.
And he also has some good books that are out there. So if you look up Dr. Amen, you can
Yes, he
find some good
does.
books as well that can provide
Yeah,
some reading on the topic.
very good. Okay. All right. One more question. What makes you passionate about this topic? Angela?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, how much time do we have? I um, I think just kind of going back to my own health journey, I had like some really chronic health issues for a lot of years, and just seeing the way that this has made an impact on my life. I think that makes me really passionate about it. Like I really do have a strong belief that there is a connection between our gut and mental health and nutrition. I'll also be honest and say that there's been seasons in my life where I've kind of closely followed a lot of these principles, and then I'm in a season right now where I haven't been, so it's not that I've just always followed it, but I've seen the difference it makes in my life. And I also really believe that God has made us holistic beings, and we can't just like separate different parts of ourselves, but that all of us and the different parts of us contribute to where we're at. And so that's why I'm passionate about it. I think it's a part of mental health that is often not looked at enough, in my opinion. And I would love to see it addressed more. I know that it's sort of outside my scope of practice to be able to address it a lot within the counseling room. But I would love to see there being more collaboration between different professions in terms of being able to see people as holistic beings where all of these things are impacting them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that, Angela. This person says thank you for sharing as well. So thank you. I agree. We're really called to. My frame of reference is often stewardship. We were designed to steward the gifts that we've been given, and one of those is our body and our brain. And this is some really useful and good practical skills and tips for doing that. So thank you so much. I think that's all the questions we have, and appreciate you all spending your afternoon with us, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much. Thank you, Angela, too.